Hello, my name is Joe Gee. I build saddles and tack principally for mules. My wife and I have mules which we both ride and pack extensively. My purpose here is to explain some of the principles of saddle fit particular to mules, along with the adjustment of the breechin and breast collar for your mule. We will begin by looking at some of the anatomical differences between horses and mules and how they affect saddle design. This mule's name is Bodil. She's named after a Danish girl who was prominent in Utah pioneer history. Mules have important anatomical differences from horses, and this affects how saddles are fit and how the saddle is adjusted to stay on the animal. Mules have much straighter, flatter backs than horses. They also tend to have less pronounced withers. That's this part of the animal right here. On a horse, this will tend to be higher and wider and more pronounced. And the effect of these two things, that is a diminished withers and a flatter back, is that the saddle has much more tendency to slide either forward or backward. Hence, that is why we use this device called a breechin to prevent the saddle from coming forward. To understand more specifically how these things work, I'd like to show you how a saddle tree looks on a mule. This is a saddle tree, or in other words, the saddle. This is the foundation of the saddle before the leather is put on it. Some of the things to note about the saddle tree is how it lays up against the animal. You can see that this is a good fit. We don't have real air spaces underneath. The tree fits flat and tight against the animal, and then we have adequate space in this area of the gullet over the withers of the animal. Now, one of the things that is most critical in fitting a saddle is to make sure that the saddle does not interfere with the movements of the shoulders. As the animal is moving, it has to have freedom for its shoulders to move. The shoulders are right up in here. If I palpate here, I can actually feel the bone. If we had her walking, you would see this moving. So I'm going to draw a little mark here, kind of outlining her shoulders. So that comes right around here. Now, the other thing that will be important is what we call the cinch pocket. That's this area right down here on the animal's sternum, where the cinch needs to go. It's not too close to the legs, and you can see how it begins to tip down here and move into the belly. So we want the cinch to basically be in an area between roughly those two lines. It's called the cinch pocket. So here we'll have this saddle tree right up in here, just basically behind the shoulder. And the rigging of the saddle, the thing that attaches the saddle to the animal, is a strap that's going to run right down here. And it's important that that strap be a straight line. We don't want it slanting this way. We don't want it slanting that way. We want it to be a straight line, and that really helps to stabilize the saddle. These trees are made out of wood covered with rawhide. If you look carefully, you can see this stitching where the rawhide is stitched over the wood. That's quite a complicated task. This tree came from Bowden Saddle Tree down in Texas, and it's an excellent saddle tree. It's made specifically for mules. They have a formula whereby the tree is made to fit the average mule back, and I find it's a very good fit. So what I want to do is proceed to put a saddle on this mule and thereby explain the breechin and the breast collar. We put the saddle pad on, and We want it to be right in here coming up onto the withers, but not clear up over. Right about there. Make sure it's centered in the back. There's a lot of technology that's changing in the world of saddle pads right now, but this isn't a discussion of that technology. I'll point out a few elements of this saddle which are important to the fit of the breechin and the breast collar. First of all, there has to be a place on the saddle for those things to attach. These are D-rings which are sewn or screwed right into the tree, through the leather and into the tree. Same with this D-ring here, which is for the breast collar. Now the significance of that is that both the breast collar and the breechin create quite a bit of tension on the saddle. And if these are not anchored into the tree, they will eventually work loose. Quite often I'll see D-rings, but they're part of a leather concho and attached to the saddle strings. And over time, that's just not a strong enough connection to support the pressures that are on them. Now you'll notice that the only saddle strings that are on this saddle are right here. And these are purely decorative. They're not intended to tie on coats or canteens or anything else. To attach a coat, I have these called footman loops attached to the tree of the saddle, and then this strap and his partner on the other side with a buckle can be used to attach a coat or a range slicker back there. The most traditional way of building saddles, you will have two layers of leather that comprise the skirts, both of which are underneath the tree. And then a hole is drilled in the tree, the saddle strings are run through that hole around the skirting leather, and that's what holds the tree to the skirts, holds the whole thing together. This saddle is built a little differently. There's two heavy layers of leather comprising the skirts, but one of them comes on top of the tree, the other one is below. It creates an envelope for the tree to sit in, which makes the tree, or makes the saddle stronger and eliminates the need for the saddle strings. Saddle strings are where a lot of saddles eventually fail, because the constant little bit of sliding and so forth will eventually cut through the saddle strings, especially if they've been exposed to a lot of weather, if they've been used to tie on coats and things, so they've got a lot of kinks and things. So to preserve the life of your saddle, one of the main things you should do is try and protect the saddle strings if they're part of your saddle. Like I say, this one pretty much eliminates the need for strings. So let's proceed with the fit of the breechin and how that works with this saddle. This is a breechin. Its purpose is to keep the saddle from sliding forward on the animal. This part here is called the spider pad, and then these are the spiders. This is the piece that goes around the hips called the butt plate. All of this has a nice rolled edge so that it is less inclined to dig in to the animal. Also made out of what's called harness leather, which is a leather which specifically is resistant to water and harsh chemicals, and for any leather that's actually in contact with the animal, it's a good type of leather to use. So to fit this breechin, the spider pad goes right behind the high point of the hip. Let's come around and attach the other side here. So here's the height of contour of the hip. The spider pad is right behind that, not a long ways behind it, but just a little bit. We will then look at, let's get your tail out of here, go down. Okay. The other thing we want to do is adjust the height of this butt plate. You'll notice the hip makes this curve here, and we want this to be right below the height of the curve. This is just a little high, and I want to put it down about 1 inch. These silver things are what are called buckle covers, and they are there to protect the tail from getting caught in these buckles when the animal swishes its tail up. To adjust this is a little bit tricky. The buckle covers will only fit this kind of a roller buckle, specific to this type of buckle. So we get it through the hole we want, run the strap through the buckle cover, back down through the buckle, pull it tight and snug it down. Okay, let's watch that one more time. Undo it, pull the hole, take that out, and the buckle cover slides up and down on the strap. So we're going to go, let's see, third hole down. So we'll go into the hole, through the buckle cover, back through the buckle. Okay. Okay, buckle cover's on. Okay, so we've got the britchin at the height I like, just below the contour of the hip. I see them all the time way down in here, and that's not good. Now, this next part is where this gets a little bit tricky. And when people order britchin from me, this is where it's hard to explain over the phone, and sometimes we have a problem. So this piece of leather I just took off is called the main tug. It goes up here to the rigging ring, and it's the main part that holds the saddle back. To adjust this, there's a buckle here in the center of it. You need to take the whole thing undone. This end goes through the rigging ring, makes a loop. Now, then it goes through the buckle, but it comes into the buckle from the back end. This is where this is a little bit different. It comes into the buckle through the back end. There's a hole here, a long ways from any other holes. That goes into the tongue. Come on. Goes into the tongue of the buckle, through there. It's pulled tight, and then this is attached to this buckle back here. Just the tension on the britchin. Now, the reason for all of that business is we want to go through this ring with a loop of leather, not a snap, like we attached this piece up here just with a snap. We don't want to use a snap here because it creates bulk under your stirrup leather. So we just want a smooth leather ring. But we don't want this double piece of leather to go clear back to here. The reason for that is that spurs can get caught between those two straps of leather. I've had that happen to me twice, and it's fairly dangerous because your leg's caught up here, you can't reach back and get it out. Your animal's probably getting bit by the spurs, and it caused me to get bucked off once. So that is how that adjusts. Now, every time you are through riding, you don't want to have to take that whole business apart. So when you're through riding, just undo this buckle here, leave this strap attached to the saddle. So it doesn't even come on and off the saddle, it just stays there. Now if you're going to use a britchin with a different saddle, of course it would need to come off, but otherwise just leave it right on there. Actually, this strap here is what I usually use, and it's actually riveted right to the rigging ring, but for the purposes of this demonstration we're using this because when someone orders a britchin, this is, and I don't have access to their saddle, this is what I'm sending out. Let's look at the tension on the britchin. You can see that I don't have it attached on the other side, so this is a little bit, matter of fact, let me snug that up here just real quick. Okay. So you can get 3 fingers in there, you know, 4 fingers, 3 fingers, whatever. It should have a little bit of release, but it shouldn't be sloppy running around on it. That's a good adjustment for the britchin. Good height and so forth. So it's running on kind of a diagonal. Sometimes you'll see these attached to this rigging ring instead of this angle. It's better than nothing, but it's not nearly as effective at holding the saddle back. Sometimes you'll also see a strap running from here down to the cinch ring. And that's to prevent the cinch from going too far forward. I've never found that necessary. Some people like it. If you do use that kind, I would suggest making sure that you don't have that double strap right here, because there's a lot of spur activity right in this area, and that safety risk of catching your spur. Those are the main points on the britchin. So when I take my saddle off, I take the britchin off first just by attaching or disattaching this buckle on each side and doing the snaps. It's really quick, and then I put the britchin away separate from the saddle simply because I don't like the added weight of the britchin. The saddle's heavy enough that for me to handle without the 2 or 3 pounds of the britchin. So now let's look at breast collar. Okay, the breast collar is designed to prevent the saddle from going backwards. This saddle has rings, D-rings, to attach it to, and where it should be is right at the base of the neck, where the neck joins the chest. Shouldn't be up in here on the windpipe, shouldn't be down in here, but just right at that junction right there. So we'll attach that there. This goes down and attaches to the D-ring on the cinch. So that's just kind of to keep this thing from flopping over. Now, one of the problems with breast collars is that they tend to get down here onto the this part of the leg. So as the animal's moving, this gets down and interferes with their movement. To prevent that, we have another strap which comes over the top of the neck, and the whole purpose then is to prevent this breast collar from falling down on the shoulder. So that's over the neck. Now, when people ask me to build a breast collar for them or a britchin, one of the key questions is how is it going to attach to the saddle? A lot of saddles either don't have this D-ring, or if they do have the D-ring, it's not anchored into the tree. One alternative way of attaching is this strap right here. What we do, if there's not a good D-ring here, you don't want to attach it to the rigging ring, because then you're just, when you bring this strap down here, you're tending to bring it across the shoulder and interfere with the movement of the shoulder. So if you don't have this, we'll generally run a strap through the gullet like this. We take and don't even have this strap here. It's just the buckle, and then we can run this gullet strap in there like that. So you have, of course, one on each side, and that's pretty much equally as effective at holding the saddle forward as the other way. Just depends on what we have to attach with your saddle. So when anything is being ordered from a maker, that's primarily what needs to be known is how the breast collar and how the britchin are going to be attached to the saddle. Let me go back to the britchin for a second and talk about some alternatives to this D-ring here. Once again, these are not commonly part of a saddle, and if your saddle doesn't have them. There's a couple of things that can be done. I'm pulling something out of my pocket here. This is just a D-ring with a brass attachment to it. And these can easily be added to this part of the saddle. They just slip in there. There's a big thick part of the tree, and you can tip the saddle upside down and screw that in tight. So that gives you a ring right there. The same thing can be done with a D-ring with just a strap of leather attached to it. Put right in there. So you've got this D-ring. And then these two snaps from the breeching can be attached right there. So this one would come up there also. And it doesn't make any difference. It's not a trade-off to the efficiency of the breeching. It's just a way that the breeching can be efficiently attached if you don't have, the saddle wasn't made with these particular D-rings. If you need to contact me or want to contact me, my phone number will be part of this video, will be right here at this location. I also intend to have a website where to make this information more readily available. Please call me if you even just need to discuss your own situation. Thank you.